The courtroom doors exploded open at exactly 9:03 a.m. Dolores Washington flinched in her seat as a tall white man in a charcoal suit strode through like he owned the building. She didn't recognize him at first. Not with that expensive haircut, that confident walk, those green eyes that used to look at her with desperate gratitude but now burned with something else entirely. Power. Subscribe and let us know where you're watching from in the comments. This reunion changes everything. Judge Claudia Richardson hadn't even called the case yet. Devin Carter, the lawyer for Riverside Development Corporation, was still arranging his files at the plaintiff's table, smiling that smug smile that said he'd already won. Why wouldn't he smile? Dolores had no lawyer. No money. No evidence except her word against forged documents claiming she owed $47,000 in back taxes. The man in the expensive suit walked straight to Dolores's table and set down a leather briefcase that probably cost more than her monthly Social Security check. "Your Honor," his voice carried across the courtroom with authority that made Judge Richardson look up from her notes. "I apologize for the timing, but I'm here to represent Mrs. Dolores Washington. Marcus Reed, admitted to the Georgia bar as of 6 o'clock this morning. I'm filing a motion to dismiss all charges based on fraudulent documentation." Devin Carter shot to his feet. "Your Honor, this is highly irregular. The defendant had no legal representation on file as of yesterday. She does now." The man pulled credentials from his briefcase. Official looking. Stamped. Legal. Dolores stared at him. Her hands trembled in her lap, arthritis making her fingers ache. She wanted to speak. Wanted to ask who he was and why he was helping her. But her throat closed up the way it always did when she got scared. The man glanced down at her. Just for a second. And when those green eyes met hers, recognition hit like lightning. Ethan. The name came out as a whisper. A prayer. A question she'd been asking God for 10 years. The corner of his mouth lifted. Not quite a smile. Something sadder. "Hey, Mama D." Dolores's vision blurred with tears. 28 years. 28 years since the scared 15-year-old white boy with track marks on his arms showed up at her door, abandoned by his drug-addicted mother at a Greyhound station. 28 years since she took him in when the foster system said she was too old, when her own church members whispered about why she was helping that white boy, instead of black children who needed homes. Ethan had called her Mama D because he couldn't bring himself to say, "Mom," that word belonged to the woman who'd left him. But Mama D was his. And she'd been his for 3 beautiful years before he aged out of her unofficial care and disappeared into a life she knew nothing about. No calls. No letters. No visits. Until now. Judge Richardson banged her gavel. "Mr. Reed, you have exactly 30 seconds to explain why I shouldn't hold you in contempt for this disruption." "Your Honor, the property liens presented by Riverside Development are fraudulent." Ethan pulled a tablet from his briefcase and uploaded documents to the court system. Digital forensics show these documents were created in 2023, not 2015 through 2018 as claimed. The metadata doesn't lie. Someone inside the city tax assessor's office forged Mrs. Washington's signature and backdated records to manufacture debt that doesn't exist. The courtroom went silent. Even the court reporter stopped typing. Devin Carter's confident smile cracked. "Your Honor, this is preposterous. The city has verified these liens. The city verified documents created by someone on Riverside Development's payroll." Ethan advanced to the bench. Gerald Hutchins, senior assessor in the property tax division, received $127,000 in payments from a shell company called Peach Street Holdings LLC between 2021 and 2024. That shell company is owned by Trevor Caldwell, CEO of Riverside Development. I have bank records, wire transfers, and signed contracts proving the connection. Judge Richardson leaned forward. "You're accusing a city employee of fraud?" "I'm accusing Riverside Development of conspiracy to commit elder fraud." Gerald Hutchins is just the middleman. Ethan pulled out more documents. In the past 3 years, Riverside has evicted 47 elderly black residents using identical tactics. Manufactured tax debt. Forged liens. Harassment until people give up and take lowball settlements. Dolores watched Ethan work like she was seeing a stranger. This wasn't the broken boy who used to cry himself to sleep. This was someone powerful. Someone who'd built himself into exactly the kind of man who could walk into a courtroom and make judges listen. Devin Carter stood up, his face flushed. Your Honor, even if these allegations were true, and I'm not conceding they are, the liens are on file with the city. Mrs. Washington owes this money regardless of how the discovery was made. Except she doesn't owe anything. Ethan handed the judge a thick folder. These are Mrs. Washington's original payment records. Recovered from the city's backup database after Riverside's associates deleted them from the active system. Every property tax payment from 2015 to 2024. Paid in full. On time. With confirmation numbers that matched the city's own archives. Judge Richardson flipped through the documents. Her expression darkened with each page. Someone deleted 9 years of payment records, Ethan continued. Someone with administrative access to the city's property tax database. The same someone who created fake liens 3 months later. This isn't a collections case, Your Honor. It's organized crime disguised as urban development. Dolores's heart hammered. She remembered those payments. Remembered scraping together every dollar from her Social Security check, walking to the county building in the August heat because she didn't trust mail, getting paper receipts that she stored in her basement filing cabinet. The filing cabinet that flooded 2 years ago during that pipe burst. The receipts she'd lost. The evidence she thought was gone forever. How did Ethan get this? How did he know where to look? Judge Richardson set down the folder. Mr. Carter, I'm ordering a 30-day continuance. The State Attorney General's office will investigate these allegations. Until then, all eviction proceedings are suspended. Mrs. Washington stays in her home. Devin Carter's face went from flushed to pale. Your Honor, Riverside Development has contracts and timelines. Riverside Development can wait 30 days while we determine if they bribed a city official to forge documents. Judge Richardson's voice could cut glass. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel banged. Dolores couldn't move. Couldn't process. She'd woken up this morning thinking she'd be homeless by nightfall. Now her case was suspended. Now Ethan was here. Ethan turned to her, and for the first time since he walked in, his confident mask cracked. She saw the scared boy underneath. The one who'd asked her, all those years ago, why she was helping him when she didn't even know him. I'm sorry I stayed away so long, he said quietly. I thought about calling 1,000 times. But I was ashamed. You gave me everything, and I couldn't even afford to send you money back then. By the time I could, I thought you'd hate me for disappearing. Want to know why he really came back? Subscribe and comment your location. Dolores reached up and touched his face. He'd grown a beard. Had lines around his eyes. But those eyes. Those green eyes that used to look at her like she was the only good thing in a terrible world, they were the same. Baby, I could never hate you. I know that now. Ethan helped her stand, his hand steady under her elbow the way it used to be when her knees got bad. But there's something you need to know. This case. It's bigger than we thought. Riverside Development isn't just trying to evict you. They're trying to erase this entire neighborhood. And they're not going to stop because a judge delayed them 30 days. They walked toward the courtroom exit. Devin Carter watched them go, his expression cold and calculating. He pulled out his phone and made a call. Dolores didn't see it. But Ethan did. And he knew that expression. The look of a man about to make someone's life hell. Ethan's own phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. Unknown number. One text message. Drop the case or your real identity gets exposed. We know who you are, Ethan Mitchell. And we know what your mother did. Ethan's blood went cold. He'd legally changed his name from Mitchell to Reed in 2003. Sealed the records. Started over. Built a new life where nobody knew his mother was Angela Mitchell, convicted drug dealer who'd served 12 years in federal prison. Whoever sent this message had access to sealed court records. Which meant whoever was behind Riverside Development had connections that went far beyond real estate fraud. Ethan deleted the message and kept walking. He wouldn't let Dolores see him scared. She'd protected him once. Now it was his turn. But as they stepped into the Atlanta morning sun, he couldn't shake the feeling that saving her house was going to cost him everything he'd spent 28 years building. Some debts can never be repaid. But they can destroy you trying. Dolores's kitchen smelled like it always had, coffee, lavender air freshener, and the faint ghost of yesterday's cornbread. Ethan sat at the same Formica table where she'd taught him algebra 28 years ago, his expensive suit jacket draped over the chair back. He looked ridiculous in her tiny kitchen, like a lion in a birdcage. But he was here. That's what mattered. Why now? Dolores poured sweet tea into mismatched glasses. Her hands shook slightly, making ice cubes clink. 28 years, baby. Not a phone call. Not a letter. Then you show up the morning they're supposed to throw me out. How did you even know? Ethan pulled out his phone and showed her a photograph. A middle-aged black man in a cheap suit standing on her front porch, holding a camera with a telephoto lens. This is Calvin Price. Private investigator. I hired him 5 years ago to check on you quarterly. Take photos. Make sure you were okay. Report if anything seemed wrong. Ethan scrolled through images. Dolores at the grocery store. Dolores at church. Dolores digging in her garden. 3 weeks ago, Calvin sent me a photo of the eviction notice on your door. I was on a plane from Chicago 6 hours later. Dolores felt something twist in her chest. You've been watching me for 5 years. And you never came. I was scared. Ethan's voice dropped to barely a whisper. The kid you took in was a mess. Drug-addicted mother. No education. No future. You gave me everything, food, shelter, love, and I disappeared the second I turned 18. Didn't even say goodbye properly. Just left a note on your kitchen counter. I remember the note. Dolores did remember. 3 words. Thank you, Mama. She'd kept it in her Bible for 15 years until the ink faded. By the time I got my life together, by the time I had money to pay you back, I thought too much time had passed. Thought you'd be angry I stayed away. So I hired Calvin instead. Convinced myself that watching over you from a distance was enough. Ethan's eyes glistened. It wasn't. I was a coward. Dolores reached across the table and took his hand. You were a child who'd been hurt. Children do what they need to survive. I never blamed you for leaving. You should have. Well, I didn't. And you're here now. She squeezed his hand. Though I still don't understand how you became a fancy lawyer. Last I knew, you were working construction in Marietta. Ethan smiled slightly. I was. For 3 years. Saved every penny. Applied to Georgia State. Got a full scholarship based on my story, white kid raised by a black woman in the foster system made for a good diversity essay. He said it without bitterness, just fact. Graduated top of my class. Got into law school. Worked my ass off. Changed my last name legally so Angela's record wouldn't follow me. Became Marcus Reed instead of Ethan Mitchell. Your mama's record. She got out of prison in 2007. OD'd on fentanyl 6 months later. I didn't find out until 2010 when her public defender tracked me down to sign estate paperwork. There was no estate. Just debt. Ethan pulled his hand back and stood, pacing the small kitchen. I built everything from nothing, Mama D. Law firm. Tech investments. Real estate portfolio. Made my first million at 34. And I did it all while pretending Ethan Mitchell never existed. Dolores understood what he wasn't saying. He'd erased his past. And now someone was threatening to expose it. That text message, she said quietly. In the courtroom. I saw your face when you read it. What did it say? Ethan's jaw clenched. Someone knows who I really am. They're threatening to expose my identity if I don't drop your case. Which means they'll expose the name change, Angela's criminal record, everything. Could get me disbarred for misrepresentation on my law license application. Then drop the case. Absolutely not. Baby, I'm not worth your career. Don't. Ethan's voice cracked. Don't you dare say you're not worth it. You saved my life. You took in a kid nobody wanted and loved him anyway. I'm not walking away from you because some developer wants to scare me. Subscribe now, this fight just got personal. A knock on the front door interrupted them. Dolores tensed. Ever since the eviction notice, every unexpected sound made her heart race. Ethan moved to the window and peered through the curtain. Woman. Early 40s. Black. Professional clothes. Carrying a notepad. I don't know anyone like that. Ethan opened the door a crack, his body blocking the entrance. Can I help you? Nina Brooks. Atlanta Tribune. I'm writing a story about Riverside Development's eviction practices. The woman held up a press badge. I'd like to talk to Mrs. Washington about her experience. Mrs. Washington isn't giving interviews. Even if those interviews could help her case. Nina pulled out a tablet and showed them a photograph. An elderly black woman standing in front of a boarded-up row house. This is Patricia Hughes. Lived 3 doors down from Mrs. Washington until 18 months ago. Riverside claimed she owed $35,000 in back taxes. She couldn't afford a lawyer, so she took their settlement offer of $90,000. Left the home her husband built in 1973. Dolores's breath caught. Patricia moved. I thought she went to stay with her daughter in Savannah. She did. Because she had nowhere else to go. Nina scrolled through more photos. This is Leonard Banks. Evicted 14 months ago. Same story, manufactured tax debt, settlement offer, forced out. This is Gladys Chen. This is Marcus Thompson. This is Ruth Davidson. All elderly. All longtime residents of this neighborhood. All evicted by Riverside Development using the exact same playbook. Ethan took the tablet and studied the images. His expression darkened. How many? 47 that I can confirm. Probably more who took settlement offers and signed NDAs. Nina looked past Ethan to Dolores. Mrs. Washington, you're the first person who fought back. The first person who went to court instead of just leaving. If you let me write your story, we can expose what Riverside is doing. We can't. Ethan handed back the tablet. Anything Mrs. Washington says publicly could compromise her case. Then let me write about the pattern without naming her specifically. Nina wasn't backing down. I have documents. Testimony from former residents willing to speak. All I need is someone to confirm Riverside's tactics match what I've uncovered. Someone who survived the system long enough to see the truth. Dolores moved to the door. Ethan tried to stop her, but she shook her head. Let her in. Nina entered the small living room, taking in the worn furniture and outdated wallpaper with the practiced eye of someone who'd been in 1,000 homes just like this. She sat on the couch without being asked, pulling out a digital recorder. Before I agree to anything, Dolores said, I need to know why you care. Reporters usually show up after something happens. You're here before. Why? Nina's expression softened. My grandmother lost her home to a development company in Oakland in 2003. Same tactics. Manufactured debt. Legal harassment. By the time she agreed to fight, she had a stroke from the stress. Died 6 months later. Her voice went quiet. I became a journalist to expose people who destroy lives for profit. Riverside Development is doing to Atlanta what that company did to Oakland. I'm not letting them get away with it. Dolores looked at Ethan. He shook his head slightly, a warning. But Dolores had spent 78 years watching powerful people hurt vulnerable ones. If Nina could stop it, Dolores would help. What do you need to know? For 40 minutes, Nina asked questions. Dolores answered. Ethan interjected with legal cautions, but mostly he listened, taking notes on his phone. When Nina finally left with a promise to check in before publishing anything, Ethan closed the door and leaned against it. That was dangerous. If Riverside finds out you talked to a reporter, they already know everything else about me. Dolores sat down heavily, exhaustion catching up. Baby, I've spent 3 years being scared. I'm tired of being scared. Ethan's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his face went pale. What is it? He turned the phone around. A news headline from Atlanta Business Daily, Marcus Reed, actually Ethan Mitchell, son of convicted drug dealer practicing law under false identity. Below it, a photo. Ethan's Georgia State student ID from 1998. The name read, Ethan Mitchell. They didn't wait, Ethan whispered. They just burned my entire life down. Comment where you're watching from, Ethan's secret is out. Dolores stood and wrapped her arms around him. He was taller, stronger, richer. But right now, he was the scared 15-year-old boy again. We'll figure this out, she said. But neither of them knew how. Because Trevor Caldwell wasn't just trying to take her home anymore. He was trying to destroy everyone she loved. Trevor Caldwell's penthouse office occupied the entire 42nd floor of the Riverside Tower in downtown Atlanta. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city he was methodically reshaping, one neighborhood at a time. He stood at those windows now, scotch in hand, watching the sun set over Peach Street 3 miles away. His phone buzzed. Devin Carter. Tell me you have good news, Trevor said without preamble. The Bar Association received an anonymous complaint about Marcus Reed this morning. They're opening an investigation into his name change and license application. Could take weeks, but he'll likely be suspended pending review. Weeks? Trevor's voice went cold. We have 30 days before the next hearing. Without a lawyer, the Washington woman folds. But if Reed finds another attorney to take over the case, we're back to square one. He already did. Marcus Reed, the real Marcus Reed from Chicago, filed appearance papers this morning as co-counsel. They planned for this. Trevor drained his scotch. Then we go to Plan B. Which is? You'll know when it happens. Just make sure your documentation is clean. When this blows up, I need you looking like the innocent lawyer who was just following his client's instructions. He ended the call and opened his laptop. The Peach Street development blueprints filled the screen: luxury condos, street-level retail, a private tech campus for tech-core industries worth $200 million. All of it dependent on acquiring the final holdout property at 1247 Peach Street. Dolores Washington's house. Trevor had built his empire on understanding people's pressure points. Everyone had something they'd sacrifice everything to protect. For most of the Peach Street residents, it had been simple: threaten their financial security, manufacture debt they couldn't fight, and they'd take the settlement. 47 families. 47 successful evictions. But Dolores Washington was different. She'd turned down $80,000. Refused $120,000. Even when faced with fabricated tax liens, she'd shown up to court ready to fight. Which meant money wasn't her pressure point. Trevor pulled up the background file his investigators had compiled. Dolores Washington, age 78, widow, former hospital custodian, 6 foster children over 3 decades, 1 unofficial adoption, Ethan Mitchell. He clicked on Ethan's file. That was where it got interesting. Ethan Mitchell, born 1983, mother Angela Mitchell, deceased 2007, drug overdose, father unknown. Placed in foster care at age 15 after abandonment. Taken in by Dolores Washington 1998 to 2001. No official adoption records. Changed name legally to Marcus Reed in 2003. Law degree from University of Georgia 2008. Built tech startup, sold to TechCore Industries for $47 million in 2022. Trevor smiled. There it was. The connection. The pressure point. TechCore Industries was funding Riverside's entire Peach Street project. Which meant Ethan's own money, the $47 million from the startup sale, was indirectly financing the eviction of the woman who'd raised him. Perfect. A knock on his office door. His assistant entered. Sir, Nina Brooks from the Atlanta Tribune is here. She doesn't have an appointment. Trevor's smile widened. Send her in. Subscribe, the journalist just walked into his trap. Nina entered with a confidence that matched his own. Recording device visible but not activated. Professional suit. No fear in her eyes. Mr. Caldwell. I'm writing an article about Riverside Development's eviction practices. I'd like your comment before it publishes tomorrow morning. How professional. Most journalists would ambush me with publication and deal with my lawyers afterward. Trevor gestured to the chair across from his desk. Please. Sit. Nina didn't sit. I have testimony from 23 former Peach Street residents. Financial records linking your company to Gerald Hutchins, the city tax assessor. Evidence of fraudulent liens. Would you like to respond? I'd like to see this evidence you claim to have. You'll see it tomorrow at 6 a.m. when the article goes live. Trevor pulled out his phone and placed it on the desk. Before you publish, Ms. Brooks, you should know I have 5 attorneys on retainer who specialize in defamation law. They will file suit against you and the Atlanta Tribune within an hour of publication. The Tribune's parent company will settle to avoid protracted litigation. You will be fired to appease my lawyers. Your career will end before lunch tomorrow. Is that really worth one elderly woman's house? Nina's expression didn't change. Yes. Brave. Stupid, but brave. Trevor stood and walked to the windows. Let me tell you what's really happening here. Atlanta is growing. Property values in historically neglected neighborhoods are finally reflecting their true worth. Residents who invested decades ago are sitting on gold mines. I'm offering them life-changing money. Most take it. Some fight. But the outcome is inevitable. Progress doesn't stop for sentiment. Progress built on fraud. Allegation. Not fact. And allegations without proof are just opinions. The Tribune's legal team knows that. He turned back to face her. But I'll make you an offer. Drop the article. Walk away. And I'll give you a real story, off the record, deep background about how urban development actually works in this city. Corruption you can't imagine. Politicians you'd never suspect. A story that could win you a Pulitzer instead of a lawsuit. For 3 seconds, Nina considered it. Trevor saw the calculation behind her eyes. Then she picked up her recording device. I'll take my chances with the fraud story. She walked out. Trevor waited until the door closed before making a call. It's done. She's publishing tomorrow. Activate Phase 2. Across town, Ethan sat in a cramped coffee shop near Georgia State's campus with Marcus Reed, his former college roommate and the real owner of the name he'd borrowed for 12 years. "They're going to suspend both of us," Marcus said, scrolling through emails on his laptop. "The Bar Association doesn't care that it was technically legal in 2 different states. They care that it looks bad. I'll take full responsibility. Say I forged your signature, used your name without permission. And commit perjury? No." Marcus closed his laptop. "We admit the arrangement voluntarily. Claim it was an administrative oversight. Pay a fine. Move on. That leaves Dolores without representation for weeks while they process everything. I already filed as co-counsel this morning. I can handle the case while you're suspended." Marcus studied Ethan carefully. "But that's not what's really bothering you. What is it?" Ethan pulled up financial documents on his phone. "TechCore Industries bought my startup for $47 million 3 years ago. TechCore is funding Riverside Development's Peach Street project. Which means my money is being used to evict Mama D." Marcus whistled low. "That's a hell of a conflict of interest. It gets worse. Trevor Caldwell knows. Has to. He's too smart not to have researched every connection." Ethan's hands clenched. "He's going to use this against us. Claim I have a financial stake in the eviction. That I'm actually working against Dolores's interests to protect my TechCore payout. Are you? Of course not. Then we disclose it preemptively. File it with the court. Beat him to the accusation." Marcus stood. "But first, we need evidence. Real evidence. Not just financial records but proof of the conspiracy. Riverside's internal documents. Communications between Caldwell and Hutchins. Something that ties them directly to the fraud." Ethan's phone buzzed. Text from Calvin Price, his private investigator. 4 words and an address. "Found everything. Come now." The address was a storage facility in East Atlanta. Ethan showed Marcus. "Could be evidence. Could be a trap. Only one way to find out." They drove through rush-hour traffic to the facility as the sun disappeared behind Atlanta's skyline. Calvin was waiting outside Unit 217, looking nervous in a way that made Ethan's instincts scream danger. "What did you find?" Ethan asked, scanning the parking lot for threats. Calvin unlocked the unit and raised the door. Inside were filing cabinets. Dozens of them. Boxes stacked floor to ceiling. Years of documents. "This unit is rented under Peach Street Holdings, one of Caldwell's shell companies. I traced the payment records through 3 intermediary accounts before finding the source." Calvin pulled out a file at random. Tax assessor reports. Forged signatures. Settlement offers. Communications between Riverside and city officials. Everything. Hit subscribe, they just found the evidence that changes everything. Marcus stepped into the unit and opened another file. His face went pale. "This isn't just elder fraud. Look at these transaction amounts. 8 million. 12 million. These numbers are way above property acquisition costs. Caldwell is using Peach Street to launder money. For who?" Ethan asked. "That's the question." Marcus pulled out more files. "But whoever it is, they're not going to let this evidence sit here once they know we found it." A car engine roared behind them. Headlights flooded the storage facility. Ethan spun around, temporarily blinded. 4 men stepped out of a black SUV. Private security. Expensive. Professional. Dangerous. The lead man smiled. "Gentlemen. Mr. Caldwell would like to have a conversation. You can come willingly, or we can make this unpleasant. Your choice." Ethan's hand moved toward his phone. The man pulled out a gun. Not pointing it. Just visible. Let's not make this complicated. Ethan looked at Marcus, at Calvin, at the storage unit full of evidence they couldn't protect. They were out of options. And Trevor Caldwell had been 3 steps ahead the entire time. The black SUV drove them to a construction site on the outskirts of Atlanta. Not Riverside Tower. Not anywhere public where witnesses might ask questions. Just empty lots, abandoned equipment, and the skeleton of what would eventually become luxury apartments. Trevor Caldwell stood beside a construction trailer, illuminated by a single floodlight. He'd changed from his business suit into casual clothes, jeans, a pullover, expensive boots. Like he was ready to get his hands dirty. "Thank you for accepting my invitation," Trevor said as the security guards escorted Ethan, Marcus, and Calvin from the SUV. His tone was conversational. Almost friendly. Which made it more terrifying. "We didn't have much choice," Ethan said. "You always have choices. That's what tonight is about, helping you make the right one." Trevor gestured to the construction trailer. "Please. Let's talk inside like civilized people." The interior was sparse. Folding table. Metal chairs. Blueprints pinned to the walls. Trevor sat on one side of the table and waited for them to sit across from him. The guards remained outside, visible through the window. "A reminder. You found my storage unit," Trevor began. "Impressive detective work. Most people would have taken months to trace those shell companies. You did it in days. You wanted us to find it," Marcus said. "Otherwise, you wouldn't have left such an obvious trail." Trevor smiled. "Smart. Yes, I wanted you to find it. Because now we're past the posturing phase. You know what I'm doing. I know what you're doing. We can stop pretending this is about one old woman's house." "What is it about then?" Ethan asked. "Money. Power. The same things everything is about." Trevor pulled out a tablet and slid it across the table. "That storage unit contains documentation on 47 evictions. Forged tax liens. Bribes to city officials. Fraudulent property transfers. Everything you'd need to send me to prison for 20 years. Ethan looked at the tablet. Financial records. Audio recordings. Enough evidence to destroy Riverside Development and everyone associated with it. "Why are you showing us this?" Marcus asked carefully. "Because I'm giving you a choice." Trevor leaned forward. "Option 1, you take this evidence to the FBI. I get arrested. My company collapses. Your case against me becomes public. And in the process, everyone learns that Ethan Mitchell, the man who sold his startup to TechCore for $47 million, has been indirectly funding the very eviction project he's pretending to fight against." Ethan's blood went cold. There it was. The trap. Trevor continued. "The media will destroy you. Your name change, your mother's criminal past, your financial connection to TechCore, it'll all become public. The narrative won't be, hero lawyer saves adoptive mother. It'll be, con man profits from elderly woman's suffering. Your reputation dies. Your money gets frozen in litigation. And Dolores Washington becomes a punchline." "Or?" Marcus asked. "Or option 2. You walk away. Drop the case. Convince Dolores to take my settlement offer, I'll raise it to $150,000, triple the original. She moves out peacefully. You avoid public scrutiny. And I give you this." Trevor pulled out an envelope and placed it on the table. $10 million. Wired to an offshore account tonight. Tax-free. Untraceable. You take it and disappear. Start over somewhere Riverside Development doesn't operate. Subscribe, would you take the money?" The room went silent. Calvin shifted uncomfortably. Marcus stared at Trevor like he was studying a poisonous snake. Ethan felt his heart hammering against his ribs. "You're trying to buy us," Ethan said quietly. "I'm offering you a way out." Trevor's voice hardened. "Because if you don't take it, option 3 happens automatically. My lawyers file motions revealing your TechCore connection. Your bar suspension becomes permanent. The Tribune's article gets buried under defamation lawsuits. And I bulldoze 1247, Peach Street with or without a court order. Dolores Washington loses her home. You lose everything. And I still win because I always win." Ethan looked at Marcus. His former roommate's expression was unreadable. "Give us a minute," Marcus said. Trevor stood. "Take your time. But decide tonight. My offer expires at midnight." He walked out, leaving them alone in the trailer with guards outside. The moment the door closed, Ethan grabbed the tablet. "We need to copy this evidence. Get it to someone who can." "It's already been copied," Calvin interrupted quietly. "I photographed everything in that storage unit before you arrived. Uploaded it to a secure cloud server. Time-stamped. Encrypted. If anything happens to us, it automatically sends to the FBI, the Tribune, and 5 other news outlets." Marcus stared at him. "You set this up?" "I've been a PI for 20 years. I know how men like Caldwell operate. They don't leave evidence lying around unless they plan to use it as leverage." Calvin pulled out his phone. "The question is, what do we do now? Because he's right about the optics. Ethan's TechCore connection will destroy the case even if we win. Then we disclose it first," Ethan said. "Tomorrow morning. Before Trevor can weaponize it. We tell the truth. I sold my company 3 years ago, had no idea TechCore was funding Riverside until last week, and I'm donating my entire $47 million payout to an elder rights nonprofit." Marcus's eyebrows shot up. "You're donating $47 million. It's blood money. I won't keep it." Ethan's voice was steel. "Mama D took me in when I had nothing. Gave me everything. I'm not letting Trevor Caldwell turn that into something dirty. Noble. But it doesn't change the fact that Trevor has enough evidence in that storage unit to tie up this case in litigation for years." Marcus rubbed his temples. "Even if we expose the fraud, even if we win in court, Dolores could die before she sees the inside of her house again. She's 78 years old. Time is her enemy as much as Trevor is." Ethan knew he was right. Legal battles took years. Appeals took longer. Dolores didn't have years. The door opened. Trevor returned. "Decided?" "We're not taking your money," Ethan said. Trevor's expression didn't change. "Then you've chosen option 3. Unfortunate. I was hoping you'd be smarter than that." He pulled out his phone and made a call. "Execute the contingency plan. Tonight." "What does that mean?" Marcus demanded. "It means by tomorrow morning, Dolores Washington's house will be condemned by the city for code violations. Emergency demolition order. The structure will be deemed unsafe for habitation. She'll have 24 hours to evacuate before the bulldozers arrive." Trevor smiled. "All perfectly legal. I have building inspectors on payroll who'll swear that house is a death trap. By the time your lawyers challenge it, the house will be rubble. Hit subscribe, time just ran out." Ethan lunged across the table. Marcus grabbed him before he reached Trevor. The guards burst through the door, guns drawn. "Careful, Mr. Mitchell," Trevor said calmly. "Assaulting me makes you the criminal. And criminals don't get to save anyone. You can't demolish that house." Judge Richardson suspended all eviction proceedings. "This isn't an eviction. It's a public safety measure. Completely separate legal process. Your 30-day continuance means nothing." Trevor stood and straightened his shirt. "My driver will take you back to your car." You have until tomorrow morning to convince Dolores to take the settlement. After that, the bulldozers come whether she's inside or not." He walked out. The guards escorted them back to the SUV. 20 minutes later, they were standing beside Marcus's rental car at the storage facility. It was past midnight. The city was quiet. And somewhere across Atlanta, Dolores was sleeping in a house that wouldn't exist in 24 hours. "We need to warn her," Ethan said. "We need to stop the demolition." Marcus was already on his phone. "I'm calling an emergency motion for tomorrow morning. We get Judge Richardson to block the code enforcement order. That'll take hours to file and days to process." "We don't have days." Calvin spoke quietly. "There's another option. If we can prove Trevor bribed the building inspector to file false reports, the demolition order becomes void. But we'd need the inspector to confess. How do we make that happen? We don't. But Nina Brooks might." Calvin pulled up a contact on his phone. "She's been investigating city corruption for months. If we give her the evidence from the storage unit, she publishes tonight instead of tomorrow morning. Forces Trevor to respond publicly before he can demolish anything." Marcus shook his head. "That violates attorney-client privilege. We can't leak evidence. Dolores isn't our client yet." "I am." Calvin's voice was firm. "I hired you to investigate Riverside development. Everything I found belongs to me. And I'm choosing to share it with a journalist. No rules broken. It was a legal gray area at best. Career-ending at worst. But it might be their only chance." Ethan pulled out his phone. "Make the call." Nina Brooks answered on the second ring. 20 minutes later, she was downloading files from Calvin's cloud server. By 2 a.m., her article was rewritten with new evidence. By 3 a.m., it was published. By sunrise, Trevor Caldwell's world was burning. And so was theirs. Dolores woke to the sound of sirens. Not police. Not fire trucks. News helicopters circling overhead like vultures. She shuffled to her front window and pulled back the curtain. Her quiet street had been transformed into a media circus. Satellite trucks lined both sides of Peach Street. Reporters set up cameras on her front lawn. Neighbors she hadn't seen in months stood on their porches, phones out, recording everything. Her phone rang. "Ethan. Mama D, don't go outside. Don't talk to anyone. I'm 5 minutes away. Baby, what's happening? Why are there helicopters?" Nina Brooks published her article 3 hours ago. Everything. The forged liens, the bribed officials, the 47 evictions. Trevor Caldwell's entire operation is exposed. But he's fighting back, and it's going to get ugly. Dolores hung up and turned on the television. Every local news channel showed the same thing, her house. Her face from some old photograph. And a cheering that made her stomach drop. Breaking, Riverside Development CEO accused of elder fraud spanning 3 years. Elderly black woman at center of controversy. The news anchor's voice filled her living room. Trevor Caldwell, CEO of Riverside Development Corporation, is facing serious allegations this morning following an explosive investigation by Atlanta Tribune journalist Nina Brooks. Documents obtained by the Tribune show a pattern of fraudulent evictions targeting elderly residents in historically black neighborhoods. At the center of the case is 78-year-old Dolores Washington, whose lawyer, now revealed to be former tech entrepreneur Ethan Mitchell operating under an assumed name, has connections to TechCore Industries, the company funding Riverside's development projects. Dolores felt the world tilt. They weren't talking about Trevor's crimes. They were talking about Ethan's name change. His mother's past. His money. The doorbell rang. Dolores peered through the peephole. A reporter with a microphone. She didn't open it. Her phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from people she hadn't heard from in years. Voicemails from numbers she didn't recognize. Friend requests on Facebook from strangers wanting a piece of her story. A car screeched to a stop outside. Ethan jumped out, flanked by Marcus. They pushed through the reporters, ignoring questions shouted from every direction. "Mrs. Washington, did you know your lawyer was using a fake name? How do you respond to allegations that Ethan Mitchell profited from your eviction? Are you aware that your case is being funded by the same company trying to evict you?" Ethan banged on the door. "Mama D, it's me. Let us in." Dolores unlocked 3 deadbolts and yanked them inside. The reporters surged forward. Marcus slammed the door and locked it. "I'm sorry," Ethan said immediately. "I'm so sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen like this." "What weren't you going to tell me?" Dolores's voice was quiet. "Dangerous. That you made $47 million from the company trying to take my house. That you've been lying about who you are. That this whole thing is just you trying to ease your guilty conscience." "No. Mama D, no." "Then explain it. Right now. Because those reporters are going to ask me questions, and I need to know what the truth is before I decide what to say. Subscribe, the truth is about to break her heart." Ethan sat down heavily at her kitchen table. The same table where she taught him to do homework. Where they'd eaten Sunday dinners. Where he'd promised, once, that he'd never forget her. 3 years ago, I sold my startup to TechCore Industries for $47 million. I had no idea, absolutely no idea, that TechCore was funding Riverside development until last week when we started digging into Trevor's finances. His voice cracked. "If I had known, I never would have taken that money. I never would have worked with them. But you did take it. And you've been living off it while I've been fighting to keep my home." "Yes. And I'm donating every penny of it. Creating a non-profit for elderly residents facing eviction. Every dollar I made from TechCore goes to helping people like you fight companies like Riverside." Marcus interjected carefully. "Dolores, I need you to understand something. Trevor Caldwell leaked Ethan's connection to TechCore deliberately. He's trying to make Ethan look like the villain so people ignore the actual fraud. It's a distraction tactic." "Is it working?" Dolores asked. A brick crashed through her front window. Glass exploded across the living room floor. Dolores screamed. Ethan threw himself in front of her. Outside, someone was shouting. "Gentrifiers! Get out of our neighborhood!" More voices joined in. Angry. Loud. A crowd was forming. Marcus peered through the broken window. "We need to get you out of here. Now. This is my house. I'm not leaving." "Mama D, please," Ethan grabbed her arm. Another brick sailed through the window. This one had a note wrapped around it. Marcus unfolded the paper. His face went pale. He showed it to Ethan. "Sellout. You and your fake lawyer destroyed this neighborhood. Leave before we burn you out." "Who would write this?" Dolores whispered. "Trevor Caldwell's people." Marcus was already on his phone with 911. "He's turning your neighbors against you. Making you look like the enemy." Police sirens wailed in the distance. The crowd outside grew louder. Someone started chanting. "Gentrifier. Sell out. Leave our neighborhood." Dolores felt tears burning her eyes. These were her people. Her community. Families she'd known for decades, now screaming at her like she was the enemy. The front door shook under heavy pounding. "Come out. Explain yourself." Ethan pulled Dolores away from the windows. "Kitchen. Stay low." They huddled in her tiny kitchen while the crowd outside grew into a mob. Police arrived, trying to push people back. But the damage was done. The narrative had shifted. Trevor Caldwell had successfully turned Dolores from victim into villain. Marcus's phone rang. He answered, listened, and his face went ashen. When? How long do we have? He hung up and looked at Ethan. Judge Richardson just received an emergency motion from Riverside Development. They're citing the mob outside as proof that Dolores's continued presence on Peach Street is a public safety hazard. They're asking for an immediate eviction order based on community unrest. That's insane. Trevor created the unrest. Doesn't matter. The judge has to respond to the motion by 5 p.m. today. If she rules in Riverside's favor, Dolores has 24 hours to vacate. Dolores sat down on her kitchen floor. This was it. After everything, the lawyers, the evidence, the media exposure, Trevor Caldwell was still going to win. Because he'd convinced an entire neighborhood that she was the problem. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You've lost. Take the settlement. $150,000. Final offer. Expires in 1 hour. After that, you get nothing and the bulldozers come tomorrow morning. Ethan read the message over her shoulder. Don't respond. We can fight this. With what? Dolores's voice broke. My neighbors hate me. The city wants me gone. The judge might rule against us today. And even if we win, Trevor will find another way. He always does. So you're giving up. I'm facing reality. Dolores stood and walked to her living room, careful to avoid the broken glass. She looked around at the house she'd lived in for 43 years. Where she'd raised 6 children. Where her husband had died. Where she'd saved a scared 15-year-old boy and watched him become a man. Maybe it's time to let go, she said quietly. Hit subscribe, her decision will shock you. No. Ethan's voice was steel. You don't get to give up. Not after everything we've fought for. Baby, I'm tired. I've been fighting for 3 years. Maybe Trevor's right. Maybe progress doesn't stop for one old woman's sentiment. This isn't sentiment. This is your home. Your life. And I'm not letting him take it. Ethan pulled out his phone and dialed. Nina. It's Ethan Mitchell. I need you to publish a follow-up article. Today. I'm going on record with everything, the TechCore money, my name change, all of it. But I'm also revealing something else. Trevor Caldwell has been laundering money through Riverside Development for years. I have proof. Bank records. Transaction logs. Everything. And I'm handing it all to the FBI right now. Marcus grabbed his arm. If you do that, you implicate yourself. TechCore could come after you for fraud. You could lose everything. I already lost everything when I stayed away for 28 years. I'm not losing her again. Ethan looked at Dolores. Mama D, you taught me that family fights for each other. That's what I'm doing. Fighting. And I don't care what it costs me. Dolores felt tears streaming down her face. You stubborn boy. I learned from the best. Outside, police finally dispersed the crowd. The helicopters circled. The reporters waited for statements. And somewhere in a luxury office, Trevor Caldwell was watching his empire begin to crumble. But he had one final move left. And it would force Dolores to make an impossible choice between saving Ethan's future and keeping her home. The Fulton County Courthouse was packed by 2 p.m. Judge Richardson had moved the emergency hearing to the largest courtroom available, but it still wasn't enough. Reporters lined the back wall. Activists filled the gallery. Former Peach Street residents who'd taken settlements years ago sat in solidarity, many wiping tears. Dolores sat at the defendant's table wearing the same purple dress from the first hearing. Ethan and Marcus flanked her on both sides. Across the aisle, Devin Carter shuffled papers with mechanical precision. But Trevor Caldwell himself was nowhere to be seen. Judge Richardson entered. Everyone rose. Be seated. She didn't waste time. Mr. Carter, you filed an emergency motion claiming Mrs. Washington's presence on Peach Street constitutes a public safety hazard. Make your argument. Devon stood. Your Honor, yesterday a violent mob surrounded Mrs. Washington's home. Bricks were thrown through windows. Threats were made. Police had to intervene. This unrest is directly connected to the media circus surrounding this case. For everyone's safety, including Mrs. Washington's, we're requesting an immediate temporary relocation order while the main case proceeds. That mob was hired by your client, Marcus shot back, standing. We have witnesses who saw Riverside Development employees paying people to protest. This is manufactured outrage designed to justify eviction. That's a serious accusation, Mr. Reed. Do you have proof? Marcus pulled out his tablet. We have time-stamped photographs showing men in Riverside Development security uniforms handing cash to individuals who later appeared in the mob. We have testimony from 3 people who were offered money to protest. And we have bank records showing payments from Riverside to a crisis management firm specializing in community pressure tactics. The courtroom erupted in whispers. Judge Richardson banged her gavel. Devon's confident expression cracked. Your Honor, even if that were true, which we categorically deny, the threat to public safety is real regardless of its origin. Mrs. Washington was endangered. That's indisputable. Because your client endangered her, Marcus countered. You don't get to create a crisis and then use it as justification for eviction. Judge Richardson studied the photographs on her screen. Mr. Carter, these images are compelling. Do you have an explanation for why Riverside employees were present at the protest? Security. We hired extra security to protect our interests in the neighborhood. Your interests? Mrs. Washington is the one who needed protection. The judge's voice could cut steel. I'm denying your emergency motion. Mrs. Washington stays in her home. Dolores felt relief flood through her. Ethan squeezed her hand. But Devon wasn't finished. Your Honor, if I may. We have another matter to address. The evidence Mr. Reed just presented was obtained through illegal means. The storage unit that contained those documents was private property. Accessing it without permission constitutes breaking and entering. Any evidence obtained is inadmissible. Marcus stood slowly. The storage unit was photographed by a private investigator hired by his client. No laws were broken. The unit's door was already open when he arrived. Convenient story. Do you have proof the door was open? We have a sworn affidavit from Calvin Price, the investigator in question. Devon smiled. We also have surveillance footage from the storage facility showing Mr. Price using bolt cutters to break the lock at 9:37 p.m. the night he discovered the evidence. The courtroom went silent. Dolores felt her stomach drop. She looked at Ethan. His face had gone pale. Marcus pulled out his phone, checking something. His jaw clenched. May I have a moment, Your Honor? Make it quick. Marcus, Ethan, and Calvin huddled at the defense table. Dolores couldn't hear what they were saying, but she saw Calvin shaking his head. Saw Ethan's expression shift from shock to rage. When Marcus stood again, his voice was measured. Your Honor, we'd like to call Trevor Caldwell to the stand. Mr. Caldwell isn't present. Then we request a warrant for his immediate appearance. Because we have evidence that he planted that surveillance footage to discredit our investigation. Subscribe, Trevor's trap is about to backfire. Judge Richardson leaned forward. That's a serious accusation. What evidence? Marcus pulled up a video on the courtroom's display screen. This is footage from a traffic camera 1 block from the storage facility, time-stamped 9:15 p.m. the night in question. It shows Calvin Price's car pulling into the parking lot. The storage unit's door is already open. Visible from this angle. He played the video. Clear as day, the unit door raised, interior lights on, someone moving inside. At 9:23 p.m., Calvin Price exits his vehicle and approaches the open unit. He does not break any locks. He does not use bolt cutters. He photographs what's already accessible. Marcus paused the video. The surveillance footage Mr. Carter presented was recorded by a camera installed inside the unit, a camera that wasn't there 3 days prior when our investigator did his initial sweep. Someone broke into that unit after we documented it, installed a camera, created fake footage, and tried to use it to discredit our evidence. Devon shot to his feet. Your Honor, this is absurd. The camera's metadata shows it was installed yesterday at 3 a.m., Marcus continued. 6 hours after Nina Brooks published her article exposing Riverside development. Someone panicked and tried to manufacture evidence of evidence tampering. Judge Richardson's expression went from skeptical to furious. Mr. Carter, did your client install surveillance equipment in that storage unit? I have no knowledge of. That wasn't my question. Did Riverside Development install a camera in that unit? Devon's silence was answer enough. Bailiff, issue a bench warrant for Trevor Caldwell. I want him in this courtroom within the hour. Judge Richardson turned to Devon. And you, counselor, are dangerously close to contempt. If I find out you knew about that fake footage, you'll be explaining yourself to the state bar. Devon sat down, his confidence completely shattered. The courtroom doors opened. FBI agents entered, 6 of them, led by a woman in her 40s with a badge clipped to her belt. Your Honor, I'm Special Agent Rebecca Torres with the FBI's White-Collar Crime Division. We have a warrant for the arrest of Trevor Caldwell on charges of money laundering, conspiracy to commit fraud, and obstruction of justice. She looked at Ethan. Mr. Mitchell, we received your evidence package this morning. It's been very helpful. Dolores stared at Ethan. You went to the FBI 2 hours ago. Gave them everything, the storage unit documents, the bank records, proof that Trevor's been using Riverside Development to launder money for organized crime figures. Ethan's voice was steady. I also told them about my TechCore connection and offered full cooperation. They're investigating the company too. Agent Torres nodded. We've been building a case against Riverside for 8 months. Mr. Mitchell's evidence gave us what we needed to move forward. We're executing search warrants on Riverside Development's offices right now. The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for the exits to break the story. Activists cheered. Devon Carter looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Judge Richardson banged her gavel repeatedly. Order. Everyone sit down. When the room finally quieted, she turned to Dolores. Mrs. Washington, I'm issuing a permanent injunction against Riverside Development. They are barred from any contact with you or your property pending the outcome of federal charges. Your home is protected. Dolores felt tears streaming down her face. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me. Thank your son. He risked everything to protect you. Hit subscribe now, one final twist remains. Outside the courthouse, Ethan's phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. Then he saw the message preview, this isn't over. You took everything from me. I'm taking everything from you. He showed it to Marcus. Trevor. He's running. FBI will catch him within hours. But 3 blocks away, in a parking garage, Trevor Caldwell sat in his Mercedes with a laptop and a phone. On the screen, live security footage from Dolores Washington's house. He'd installed cameras months ago. Just in case. And now he was watching Dolores return home with Ethan and Marcus, celebrating their victory. Trevor made one final call. The house at 1247, Peach Street. Gas leak. Make it look like an accident. Tonight. He ended the call and started driving toward the airport. If he couldn't have Peach Street, nobody would. Especially not Dolores Washington. Dolores stood in her kitchen that evening, making sweet tea the way she'd done for 43 years. Ice clinking in mason jars. Sugar dissolving in hot water. The simple ritual of home. Outside, the media had finally dispersed. The protesters were gone. Peach Street was quiet again. Ethan sat at the table, exhausted. The FBI had questioned him for 3 hours after the hearing. They'd confiscated his laptop, his phone records, every piece of evidence related to TechCore Industries. Agent Torres promised he wouldn't face charges if he cooperated fully, but the investigation would take months. "You should eat something," Dolores said, setting a plate of reheated chicken and collard greens in front of him. "You haven't eaten all day." "I'm not hungry." "Eat anyway." He took a bite to appease her. The food tasted like sawdust in his mouth. The Tribune called. "They want an interview. Full profile. The whole story, Angela's addiction, the name change, how I built my company. They're calling me the man who gave up millions to save his mother." "You don't sound happy about it." "Because I didn't give up anything. I gave back money I should never have taken." Ethan pushed food around his plate. "And the story's wrong. You saved me. Not the other way around." Dolores sat down across from him. "We saved each other, baby. That's what family does." A car pulled up outside. Marcus entered through the back door, his expression grave. "We have a problem. FBI just issued a warrant for Trevor Caldwell's arrest. He never went home after the hearing. Never went to his office. His Mercedes was found abandoned at a long-term parking lot near the airport, but there's no record of him boarding any flights. He's running," Ethan said. "Or hiding. Either way, the FBI considers him dangerous. Agent Torres called to warn us. Trevor knows he's going to prison for years. People in that position make desperate decisions." Dolores felt a chill run down her spine. "You think he'd come after us?" "I think we shouldn't take chances. The FBI offered protective custody until they locate him. I'm not leaving my house." Dolores's voice was firm. "I spent 3 years fighting to stay here. I'm not leaving now because some coward is running from the law. Mama D. No. This is my home. I stay." Marcus exchanged a look with Ethan. "Then we stay with you. Both of us. Around the clock until Trevor's in custody." For the next 2 hours, they took shifts watching the street. Ethan checked every window lock. Marcus swept the house for anything unusual. Dolores made more tea and pretended she wasn't terrified. At 11 p.m., Marcus's phone rang. "Agent Torres. We tracked Trevor to a motel in Chattanooga. Local FBI is moving in now. Should have him in custody within the hour." Relief washed over the room. Marcus thanked her and hung up. "It's over," he said. "Trevor's contained. You're safe." Dolores finally let herself breathe. "Thank God." "I'm going to make one more perimeter check," Ethan said, standing. "Then we can all get some actual sleep." He walked through the house, checking doors and windows one final time. Everything secure. The street outside was quiet. No suspicious cars. No movement. He returned to the kitchen. "All clear. I think we can." The smell hit him. Faint but unmistakable. Natural gas. "Get out," Ethan said quietly. "Right now. Don't ask questions. Move." He grabbed Dolores's arm. Marcus was already heading for the back door. But the moment Marcus touched the knob, Ethan saw the wire. Thin. Nearly invisible. Connected to the door frame. "Stop. Don't open it." Marcus froze. "What?" "It's wired. Someone booby-trapped the door." Ethan's mind raced. The gas smell was getting stronger. Front door too probably. Windows. Trevor didn't run. He planted a bomb. Subscribe, they have minutes to escape. Dolores's face went white. How do we get out? We don't. Not until the bomb squad clears the house. If we trigger any of those wires, the whole place goes up. Ethan pulled out his phone to call 911. No signal. Someone had installed a jammer. Marcus tried his phone. Same result. We need to get far enough away from the jammer to make a call. If we go outside, the doors explode. If we stay inside, we suffocate or the gas ignites from the water heater. Ethan moved to the basement door. Not wired. Basement. Now. They descended the old wooden stairs into Dolores's unfinished basement. Concrete walls. Small windows near the ceiling. And a crawl space that led under the front porch, the one Dolores's late husband had used for plumbing repairs. That crawl space exits to the front yard, Dolores said. But it's barely 2 feet high. I can't fit through there. You can. You have to. Ethan pulled aside boxes and old furniture to expose the crawl space entrance. Marcus, get her through. I'll follow. What about the gas? If there's a spark down here. Then we die faster. Move. Marcus helped Dolores to the crawl space. She squeezed through, arthritis making every movement agony. Marcus followed. Ethan was about to enter when he heard it. Footsteps upstairs. Someone was in the house. Trevor Caldwell's voice echoed through the floorboards. I know you're down there. The FBI thinks I'm in Chattanooga. I paid a homeless man to use my credit card at that motel. Bought myself time. Ethan froze. Marcus was already outside with Dolores. If Ethan followed, Trevor would see the open crawl space and know where they went. He'd detonate the bomb while they were still too close to the house. But if Ethan stayed, he could buy them time to run. He made his decision. Ethan closed the crawl space entrance and walked back upstairs. Trevor stood in the kitchen, holding a remote detonator. Just you. Where's the old woman? Gone. Out the basement exit. She's blocks away by now. Trevor smiled. You're lying. But it doesn't matter. This house goes up, everything in it dies. Including you. Then do it. Press the button. But you'll go down as the man who murdered someone trying to protect his mother. That's your legacy. My legacy. Trevor laughed bitterly. I built this city. Poured billions into neighborhoods everyone else ignored. Created jobs. Increased property values. And what do I get? Accused of fraud by some journalist and betrayed by a con artist who made millions off the same system he's pretending to fight against. I gave that money back. You gave it away to feel better about yourself. That doesn't make you noble. It makes you a hypocrite. Trevor's finger hovered over the detonator button. You want to die a hero? Fine. I'll make you a martyr. Maybe then people will realize what you really are, a criminal son who never deserved anything he got. Outside, Dolores heard Ethan's voice through the thin walls. She realized what he'd done. He'd stayed behind to buy them time. No, she whispered. Not my baby. Not again. She turned back toward the house. Marcus grabbed her arm. Dolores, don't. That's my son in there. I didn't save his life 28 years ago just to lose him now. She pulled free and ran toward the front door. Marcus tackled her to the ground as she reached the porch. You can't go back. The doors are wired. Then I'll break a window. Hit subscribe, someone isn't making it out alive. Inside, Ethan stared at Trevor. If you do this, you get nothing. The FBI already has everything. Your money's frozen. Your properties are seized. You're dying broke either way. But I'm taking you with me. And that's enough. Trevor pressed the button. Nothing happened. He pressed it again. Still nothing. Looking for this? Agent Torres emerged from the hallway, holding a battery pack. We disabled your detonator 30 minutes ago. That gas leak? We vented it remotely. Your bomb. Defused. You're done, Caldwell. FBI agents flooded the house through the back entrance. Trevor dropped the useless remote and raised his hands. How did you? Your landscaping company called in a suspicious work order yesterday. Someone paying cash to adjust the gas line at 1247 Peach Street. We've had agents watching this house since sunset. Agent Torres cuffed Trevor personally. You're under arrest for attempted murder. Add that to the money laundering and fraud charges. They dragged him out through the back door. Ethan stood in the kitchen, shaking. Marcus and Dolores burst through the front door, which was never wired at all. The FBI had lied to draw Trevor into the open. Dolores wrapped her arms around Ethan. Don't you ever do that again. Don't you ever sacrifice yourself for me. I wasn't sacrificing anything. I was protecting everything that matters. Ethan held her tight. It's over, Mama D. It's really over. But outside, as FBI agents loaded Trevor into a squad car, Nina Brooks stood with her camera recording everything. Tomorrow, the world would know the full story. And Dolores Washington would become more than just an elderly woman who fought eviction. She'd become the symbol of every person who refused to let greed win. 6 months later, Dolores stood on her front porch watching moving trucks line Peach Street. Not eviction trucks this time. Return trucks. Patricia Hughes was moving back into her house 3 doors down. Leonard Banks unpacked boxes next door. 47 families, every single person Riverside Development had displaced, were coming home. The settlement had been massive. The FBI seized Trevor Caldwell's assets, $89 million total. After legal fees, every former resident received enough to buy back their properties and renovate them. Peach Street wasn't being erased. It was being restored. Trevor himself sat in federal prison awaiting trial on 17 counts. His lawyers predicted 25 years minimum. Devin Carter had been disbarred. Gerald Hutchins pleaded guilty to fraud and was serving 18 months. And Ethan was finally free. The Georgia bar had suspended him for 6 months but allowed him to reapply under his legal name. He'd spent that time building the Dolores Washington Foundation for Elder Rights, funded entirely by his TechCore money. The foundation had already helped 300 families fight predatory developers. Mama D. Patricia Hughes called from her porch, waving. Come see my new kitchen. They installed everything just like I wanted. Dolores waved back, smiling. Her neighborhood was returning. Her community was healing. Subscribe, this ending will restore your faith. Ethan emerged from the house carrying 2 glasses of sweet tea. He'd moved into Dolores's spare bedroom 3 months ago. Said he'd spent too many years away and wasn't wasting any more time. You thinking about what Nina asked, he said, handing her a glass. Nina Brooks had won a Pulitzer for her Riverside Development investigation. Now she wanted to write a book about Dolores's story. Maybe. If it helps other people fight back. Dolores sipped her tea. But that's not what I'm thinking about right now. A young girl, maybe 14, black, with sad eyes, walked slowly up the street carrying a backpack. She stopped at Dolores's gate, hesitating. You Mrs. Washington? The girl asked quietly. I am, baby. The social worker said, she said you help kids who don't have anywhere to go. Is that true? Ethan met Dolores's eyes. She saw him remembering, 28 years ago, a scared white boy asking the same question. Dolores opened her gate. "What's your name, sweetheart?" "Kennedy." "Well, Kennedy, come on in. Let me fix you a plate." The girl's shoulders sagged with relief as she stepped through the gate. Ethan held the door open, and they all walked inside together. Some stories end where they began. Some debts can never be repaid, only passed forward to the next person who needs saving. Hit subscribe, because love always finds a way home.